Hi, guys.
All right. So, who is Cynthia and where is she from?
Well, Cynthia is a native New Orleanian who knows all things beauty and fashion, as well as business strategy. She is born of a mother, a master hairstylist, and a father that was in construction and ironwork. She's the granddaughter of a chef, and she doesn't know how to bake.
You don't need that. You got the other skills.
Period.
Now, how did you get started in the fashion industry? Tell us all about that.
Well, my mother had a salon, and she told me that I couldn't go to beauty school. She said, "You were the only person. She's the only person that's going to do hair in this family." So I had to figure out what I was going to do. And I remember realizing I loved playing dress up in my mom's, closet, and I also loved the beauty. No, it was the Barbie fashion designer. She bought me Barbie fashion designer kit. And I remember saying, "Is this a job? Can I do this?" And for my senior year, I remember going to the computer lab in high school. I went to Xavier Prep Uptown. So we had corner stores, we had food, and we also had a fashion designer named Harold Clark that had a building there. And I remember visiting and looking at this as an opportunity to do something. And my parents told me I had to prove to them. And I gave my first fashion show at Prep in 2003. And then I realized I could go to college. On the back of a brochure, they had fashion merchandising. So I go, I'm gonna go. The standards what I'm gonna do with my life. But then it goes, okay. And there it was. I started researching designers and styles like Misa Hilton Brim at the time, which is, she's like the first black fashion stylist that now has her own school. And I just began to see this world that I had to read about in New York, where my mother was from. So, and my grandmother. So it was like they came together and allowed me to realize it was possible. And there were people that looked just like me doing it.
Well, it was in the blood. I mean, the hair is amazing, curly, funky, the glasses. And what does it say on the earring?
Oh, it does say merchant. Oh, the earring. Oh, the glasses say merchandiser 504.
Okay.
But the earrings are actually from a designer friend called Runoff.
Okay, those are so cool.
And they're like an energy of run off, beep.
Oh my God. So what's your background in fashion? I know that you just told us a little bit about your college and whatnot, but really give us maybe a broader scope about what the background really was.
Well, it started after I decided I wasn't going to be a fashion designer after my first fashion show. I went to school and it was fashion merchandising with a minor in marketing. So what was that when you get out of school? So I began my internship with Wet Seal. I did visual installations.
Wet Seal.
And my first real job was Banana Republic. So it was like after this, I was like, oh, I could work for corporate. I was the retail junkie, which was crazy because you could not. When you went to New York, there was something called fashion careers, and literally they said retail was not an experience. So I told my mom, I said, well, I'm going to have to do all the retail, so I know all the experience about all the particular type of departments in fashion, menswear, kids. And then I said, I don't know if I really want to be. I don't want to be a manager. I'm not, I don't want to be in retail management. But I like the business aspect of it. So I wanted to actually be a fashion show director. But there was no fashion shows here at the time. I was like, what? So here I am, always thinking outside the box, literally, the box of Louisiana, the boot, thinking outside the boot, literally. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do fashion trend forecasting, which is basically about the trends and being they used to call them style spotters. They would travel the world and they would spot street style and they would basically turn that into articles. The closest thing I could get was when I pitched myself to Times-Picayune. And the author was Susan Linehan at the time. She was a fashion editor. And my dad used to get the paper. And that was my career. My background was actually fashion journalism. And it started to be where I got the first story was with the Herbert Men's family, which was a personal client of mine. I did styling at UAL, and she was my client. She said, Cynthia, I love the story. Let's do it. So I called Cheryl and her mom. I went to the store and interviewed them. That was my first interview.
Tell them a little bit about UAL if people out there don't know.
UAL is, well, on the record, after I wasn't their employee and I walked out.
We'll get there next.
There's a story behind UAL. But UAL is a United Apparel Liquidators, and they liquidate fashion. And I will say this. when they had the Miranda moment of Devil Wears Prada, this was my Devil Wears Prada moment, literally. So Samantha was a buyer there, and she was very extreme, mean, money-making machine. And she was the buyer of UAL, and she kind of came through the existence of like resale, like fashion. She would go to people's garages, like some designers now. I had Sephora items before Sephora was Sephora. My mother shopped there at all these locations, and when I got out of college, I just knew that I needed to work here because this place had the secret that I need. And so that's how I met all these clients and learned with all these fashion brands, and was able to be really like upcycling ideas and concepts, because this store used a lot of original items. Like the store I worked was in the French Quarter, so we had a lot of oldness, old brick, old buildings, old fixtures, old vibes, old customers, old money. So it taught me a lot about business and strategy and how she maneuvered around. So I remember staring at her books, flipping through some of those pages, being a manager at night.
I just walked by that window in the French Quarter yesterday. They had the most gorgeous Alexander McQueen high heels.
Best shoes.
I was like in heaven.
Best shoes. And now they're all over. I remember they're now in Nashville, they're in Austin, they're in Tennessee. And I remember I got in trouble for something. They wanted to demote me, and I remember walking out. I said, you're not demoting me, I'm walking. And I did have another job, and I always go to town when I walk out of a job, but it was like, you're not demoting me. And the woman, I never forget, she said, I never had somebody tell me, well, you never met me. Sorry. So that was kind of like the background of like me elevating the retail structure. And then I got my big break in fashion merchandising, where I worked for Vince Camuto, Nike, and Coach exclusively. I was part of the Southeast region of merchandisers. I worked for a company called Davico. And then it branched off into like major operations, business. I left the Nike division and I worked for the Saints. I was the first black, go down history, the first black buyer for the women's and kids division. And then I was responsible for every piece of merchandise in the Superdome. I could tell my great nephew that.
Okay.
But that was one of the big breaks. My family was so proud, especially my dad. So it was like nice to take all of my lessons in fashion and really merge creative with business.
So tell me a little bit about your first fashion show. What was that experience like?
Well, that was the one I was telling you about a little bit from high school, but the real fashion show was kind of preliminary, right? For my college presentation at Southeastern, where I graduated undergrad, I did a fashion show that was called The Last of the Legacy, because I'm the last Coleman girl I'm not married, and I'm never giving up my last name, so I was the last of the legacy. I was my grandfather's, I guess you could say like the male last name. He has a younger granddaughter, but she's got her father's last name. So this was a combination of ode to my grandparents. I've always been a historian of the family. I was a historian in my fashion club. Shout out to the Southeastern Association of Family Consumer Merchandising. We had to like elevate this fashion show, and I had my mother. All the sponsorship came from my mom's donation at the hair salon. My sister made my first poster. I hired seamstress, my friends who I'm still friends with today, to do the fashion show. And then after I had 101 fever, run the fashion show, did it, incomplete. My dad gave me flowers. My grandmother, everybody was alive and there. And then I left and went to Italy for 4 months. So it was amazing.
Ooh.
I gave myself I always leave that exit.
The mecca, though, of fashion, that's like where you have like Milan, and then you've got over in Europe, you've got Paris. That's like where the mecca is. What did you find over in Italy really inspired you?
What I didn't find.
Hot boys.
Hot Italian. Giuseppe, where you at? No, I'm Johnny. Johnny, what's that? No, traveling independently. It was like 2007 when I graduated undergrad. It was amazing. I was still in
you
school.
were a trailblazer. 2007. That's like, we didn't have everything that we have now, where people are afraid to travel, and we don't have GPS, and you can't just call home. You need a payphone.
That's right. I didn't even have an app. It was so Google. I had a map. I had a little book that had words, and I had a book that talked from the bookstore, Books A Million. So there was a button you press, and you talk into this pen. And then you press the pen, and the pen reads. It was some type of translator's book, but I remember I got my nails done and my toes done, and they'd been on gel. What? That gel was so thick they couldn't get it off when I got back. I mean, it was this. I did independent fashion studies. I won a scholarship, so that's why I stayed so long. And I ate food with the family. I embraced the culture. I traveled to Milan, Venice, Bologna, Pisa. People were exquisite. And at that time, it was pioneer for your families, especially a Southern Black girl, to travel internationally and feel like, you know, she was part of the family. And it was more cultural and spiritual and loving around food, family, and fashion. When I went to the Mercer Hotel and had a melantini, and Johnny served it to me, and we watched fashion shows in Milan, not sports, I was in heaven. I was in heaven.
So let's talk about favorite brands, maybe either from Italy or America.
Well, you know what I loved? I love Mazzoni, which I actually finally got my first piece of Mazzoni from my friend who owns a store in a vintage resale shop in Brooklyn. And she actually carried some of my products. She's amazing. Shout out to 20th Scott Vintage in New York that have a new location. I bought my first piece of Mazzoni. Mazzoni, I saw one of the flagship stores in Venice. I fell in love. Colors, the prints, the textures, the vibes. It's just understated fun. And I think I definitely want to get back to that fun in fashion. And that's why I'm segueing into what I'm doing now. So,
who are the mentors?
Oh, wow. Well, Susan Langen definitely gave me my start. And she is the reason why I'm in merchandising today. Shout out, Susan. Susan, we were supposed to have a fashion team, right? Right before Essence was having a big relaunch here in the city. And she pulled me aside. She said, "Out there, going to cancel the budget because we're going to talk about crime." Great. So I remember getting this call. I'm walking through Saks Fifth Avenue because I'm got to get a job because newspaper is ending. And I get on the phone with Susan. Susan says, "Sathya, you should go. You should do merchandising." I'm on the phone. I'm like, "Susan, you know, we've been writing for about 5 years now. Susan, why? You know, I'm not making any money, but I love what I do." I'm like, "Susan, why?" "Sathya, you went to school for merchandising. You can do this." That conversation led me to where I am today.
So when did you start the fashion brand guru?
Such a great story.
When does the name, what is the name? When did it start?
It's such a good
How did
story.
you create it?
You guys have to, look, the book is coming, baby. So fast forward, you know, in every woman's life you have those moments. And I remember in school, my fashion teacher, shout out to Miss Didier, she was also a mentor to me, so many. She said, "After you in love?" I was like, "No, I'm in love with fashion." And so that kind of depicts to what's the next stage. She said, when I went to, what was the question?
When did you start?
Oh, the fashion
brand guru.
So that's right. I'm getting
what
off
does
with
it
business.
mean? No worries. What does it mean?
Yeah.
How did you come up with the title?
Yes.
And when did you start it?
Okay.
What is it?
Yeah, so we got to the boy section. My long-term boyfriend broke up with me. And it went from our life to my life again. And I remember sitting on the sofa and I called my mother and I said, at that time I'd always, I was studying with Geraldine Wary, who's my mentor and friend to this day. She did fashion trend forecasting for WGSN. And if anybody know what that is, WGSN is one of the top publications in the world for fashion trends. They tell you what's coming in, what's coming out, what's going. She was over the trend department. And I reached out to her on LinkedIn and she saw my passion and invited me to come to London. And I did a week private internship, all expenses paid on me. My mother and my sister went with me to support me. And that breakup was the best thing that ever happened to me because Geraldine said, "Sathya, I can't go to all these shows. Can you go to the London Scoop show? Can you go to the London Pure show?" I'm like, absolutely. So I remember like my mom there's a picture of me on my website at the Fashion Guru where there's a picture of me walking into the stage, right? So I walk in, I meet this girl who I still talk to today, Emily London. I don't want to say, it's her name is Emily Carter. Emily Carter did, that's off of the movie I was watching last night. Emily Carter drew these beautiful illustrations. It was her first time at London Scoop. I was Geraldine interning. I walk in there and I say, I'm giving her ideas, I'm talking. She's like, "Where do you live? You live in London?" I was like, "No, I live in New Orleans." She's like, "What?" She invited me to have tea. She's like, you are amazing. She says, what is the name of your business? Now, mind you, I didn't have a name. I didn't even have a business. I just was here playing Geraldine Wary, intern. I said, and before I could think, came right out of my mouth, the Fashion Brand Guru. It was from Source. It was from Him Above. It just came out. And I was like, oh, that's a good name. I was like, the Fashion Brand Guru. And she's like, oh my God, it's amazing. And we still kept in touch to this day with pictures together. Geraldine birthed my business. So when I got back to intern, I talked to Geraldine and she said, Sandra, you do not need to move to London. You can do just what you're doing in New Orleans. And I'm going to show you how. And from that day on, that was 2016, I went to London. That's when the Fashion Brand Guru was born. And the name comes from the guru being like Indian culture. So I'm named after my sister's childhood best friend. So I'm Satya number 2. And my name actually means happiness. So, yeah, so the guru, in fact, my cousin, shout out to Florida Lee Tiff. She's a local artist. It's an Indian girl with her hands like this, praying over her career. Yeah, so it's like my kind of like symbolic to my own spiritual journey is like, and it's like basically based off of Indian, my Indian name roots, as well as kind of like my spiritual journey around, you know, the Indian culture. Because I was born into it, if you will. You know, every time people hear my name, you know, I get extra curry. So.
So explain to us, for those of us that don't know, what merchandising is.
Yes.
And then tell me the difference between visual and fashion merchandising. How do they differ?
Definitely. So this is a topic that I definitely want to bring into the Clubhouse sector because that's like an audio app, right? Where you talk about what things are. So merchandising is silent selling. I keep it simple. Silent selling. It's arrangement, organization, and the juxtaposition of an item. Clothing, brand, but the item. Visual merchandising is the overall picture, right? It could be anything that you have, whether it's a pillow, it's a blanket, it's an item. With fashion merchandising, it's specifically to fashion, right? It's the shoes. It's because you're using mannequins instead of maybe crates that are acrylic. You're using different tools to execute the merchandising.
All right. Now that brings us to the big question is, what is Maven School of Merchandising?
So excited. So this has been years in the making because as a creator, you always want something of your own. You've been working on several brands. I've worked over 100 brands in my lifetime to date, plus. And so Maven School of Merchandising brewed from me speaking in New York at one of the top merchandising universities about my research with fashion merchandising. And I also have a certification in fashion psychology with the renowned professor Dawn Karen. And so I want to take my influences and what I do and put them in some really fun learning, because I've always felt like learning is great, but it was a little stiff. And so Maven School of Merchandising is about me, the Maven, telling you about how you can elevate your business, whether it's an entrepreneur brand or it's you working in a corporate store or whether you being a merchandiser yourself. Because now something that was so passe 23 years ago when I started is now a big name. Everybody's merchandising everything. And so I thought Maven School of Merchandising should be launched into the world, and not only as a monument archival tool and resource for people interested in fashion merchandising, but a way for me to help the future fashionistas.
Now, what about merchandising on like socials or something like that?
Oh, yes. So digital merchandising is something that I've always been in peas in. Fashion tech was a new term. Shout out to the developer Liz Claire because she coined it. And she started the group called, and I was in Washington when I met some of the founding members. She started a group called Decoded Fashion. And Decoded Fashion, woman-led. And she talked about the merging of how important fashion technology was in this sector. And now we have AI today. So a lot of the things that are suggested AI was manually done back in the days was fashion tech. And so that's something that I definitely want to bring highlight into my school in a unique way where it's authentic and it's not robotly driven.
So break it down, just a couple tools or features that we should expect.
Yeah, so definitely gonna have interacting experiential merchandising activities. So we're gonna have visual content. I have a lot of merchandising friends and people that I'm going to be working with live sessions with me. You're going to have able to do consultations with me. I do travel and fly. So you'll be able to have a meetup with me. We're going to have all kind of incentives and offers when it comes to actually merchandising your brand. We also are talking about the pop-up markets, using that in our toolbox, right? Whether you have a brick and mortar location, you have a website e-commerce, or you have a pop-up and you want to get into either or, we're able to accommodate that with a really fun way to learn how to do it at your own pace. And one thing about my Maven School of Merchandising, it's not going to be autopilot program. It's going to be a very interactive program. As you can see, I'm very interactive and personable. And so you'll have the tools and tips that you need via PDF and a digital workbook, but to have access to somebody like me with all this knowledge is, to me, it's impeccable. So I want to bring it to you guys with these merchandiser toolkit.
That's where you get all the good stuff, is at the boutique stores.
Yes.
I think we're over all these giant stores.
Yes.
And it's like you really get the good stuff and the handcrafted, handmade, and that's where it's at right now.
It's priceless, and these are heirloom pieces. These are signature pieces. This is the niche market that everybody wants to tap in but can't do it in a commercial manner. And that's what we're going to teach you how to do at Maven School of Merchandising.
Okay. So incorporate a little bit about your specialty, which is fashion psychology and fashion trending forecast.
Yes.
What is that? What does it mean?
So fashion psychology, there's two different concepts, but I was studied under Professor Dawn Karen in New York, and I actually was able to go to Fashion Week with her and study alongside her as we talk about dopamine dressing, which you see a lot. She's interviewed people all over the world, and the concept was like focal accessory, which is one of my favorite terms in fashion technology. In fashion psychology. And it's about like how I wear this necklace that my mother gave me when I was 13. No matter what outfit I put on, I'm always going to have this necklace on because it's a connection. It's an emotional connection, but it's also a fashion connection with my mother. It's a focal accessory. It focals on an emotional, empathic sense that I have. So when you're selling jewelry or you're merchandising jewelry, how can you put on those heirloom pieces or those spiritual pieces or those, the handmade piece that looks like your grandma wove it? It's an empathic connection with a material good that you may try to convey, merchandising and marketing. And so I use those tactics as kind of like an upbeat way to sell to your customers in a very authentic way, because you may have a story to go along with that, and storytelling is very big. And that storytelling leads me to my concentration, as I'm a member of the Tralia Community that was started by Jerry Dean Wary after she left WGSN. So I'm one of the founding members. I'm a visionary in her group, and we're a collective group of trend forecasters, and my specialty is with merchandising. And my goal is to make sure we're doing diversity and inclusion in the field of women of color, be present in the fashion sector as they were not back in the days. And so I'm taking those trends and those forgotten about forecasters that probably weren't adapted into mainstream. I'm putting their tactics and their tools into the program that was influenced by me sitting here today. So all the research that I've done with fashion trend forecasting and how you can be the trend, right? You can change for good. It can be utilized in your school. Utilized in your store with my school.
Okay, so where do I sign up? How do I find you? What are your social handles?
Well, I have a lot. I've been on the internet for a long time when it started. But you can find me at the Maven School of Merchandising on Instagram, as well as my store. If you want to see how I'm working, what I'm teaching, it's at shopgirlcollective.com. And then please head over to LinkedIn, my professional page, where you can also join the group to help me mentor younger fashionistas at the People Are the Runway, which is a LinkedIn group that I have.
Woo! All right. Class is going to be a blast.
Come and join us at the Maven School of Merchandising.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Bye.